Ever wondered how the Israelites actually went about dividing up the promised land? Like, it's got to be more than just drawing lines on a map, right?
Yeah.
Well, we're diving deep into Joshua chapters 19 through 21, and let me tell you, there's some seriously interesting stuff in there about how this brand new nation set about building its future.
Really gets you thinking.
Yeah, it's all about who got what, why it even mattered, and what it reveals about their society as a whole. You know, Imagine for a second wandering in the desert for decades, following this promise of this incredible land. Then finally, you arrive.
Right.
But then you have to divvy it all up, right?
Yeah.
Between 12 different tribes, each with their own history, and let's be honest, probably some pretty strong opinions about, well, prime real estate.
Yeah.
Joshua chapter 19 throws us right into the thick of it. We start with the tribe of Simeon, who end up with a chunk carved out from Judah's territory. And and get this, the text actually says that Judah's portion was too large for them.
Really?
Too large.
Wow, that's fascinating. I mean, you see right there this little detail that already hints at some power dynamics at play,
Right.
even in this division that's presented as divinely guided.
Divinely guided, yeah.
Were some tribes perhaps seen as more, how should I put it, favored than others? I mean, what do you think this tells us about their view of fairness, even within a system that's guided by faith?
Right. It makes you wonder, like, what were those conversations even like? And it's not just about who got what. It's how they even decided, right? They were using these geographical markers, hills, valleys. There's even mention of a specific oak tree in one case to actually mark the boundary.
An oak tree?
Yeah. Can you picture, like, the surveyors back then figuring all that out with the tools they had at their disposal?
I mean, talk about a challenge. It really gives us a glimpse into a society that was already much more complex, much more settled than we tend to imagine, I think.
Right.
These weren't just nomadic tribes anymore. They were in the process of actually establishing a nation.
Yeah.
And that requires some serious planning, meticulous record keeping,
Yeah.
a system of law and order, the whole shebang. And that's really where this whole idea of cities of refuge comes in, as described in Joshua chapter 20.
Okay. Cities of refuge, it does kind of sound like something out of an ancient thriller novel or something.
Right. Well, picture this. You've accidentally committed a crime, maybe in the heat of the moment, right? And now you got to get somewhere safe before anyone decides to take justice into their own hands.
Wow. Yeah. It really makes you think about how different things were back then.
Yeah, and it really highlights, for me anyway, a surprisingly nuanced legal system, especially for its time. It's like they understood that not all killings were intentional. So they created these cities, these safe havens, specifically for acts of manslaughter.
So you're saying there's actually a legal distinction being made here, like manslaughter versus premeditated murder.
Exactly. So say someone accidentally killed their neighbor during an argument. They could flee to one of these cities, and plead their case before the elders.
I see.
And if it was deemed accidental, they were protected from, well, this is where it gets really interesting, the Avenger of Blood.
Okay. Avenger of Blood. All right. You're going to have to elaborate on that one. Who exactly was that? What did that mean in practice back then?
Sure. So the Avenger of Blood was usually a close relative of the victim, and they were tasked with carrying out justice, which, well, back then often meant taking the life of the killer, right? But these cities of refuge, they offered a way to interrupt that cycle of vengeance, allowing for a more, let's just say, measured approach to justice.
That's really fascinating. It's like they were trying to balance, like, upholding the law while also recognizing that sometimes, terrible things happen even without any sort of malicious intent behind them.
Absolutely.
But logistically, I mean, how did this even work? I know that Joshua chapter 20 lists 6 specific cities across the land.
Right.
What was so special about these particular locations?
Well, the placement was strategic. These cities were chosen very deliberately to be within reach of every single tribe. So no matter where you were, there was always a city of refuge within, a day's journey, usually even less.
So accessibility was key.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't just about having these cities. It was about making sure that everyone had equal access to them,
Precisely.
regardless of their tribe or where they live.
Exactly. And that, for me, points to this real desire to create a system that was both just, but also unifying, Remember, these tribes, they were united in their faith,
Right.
but they also had their own histories, their own potential rivalries.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
These cities weren't just about individual justice, they were about preventing wider conflict, between the tribes.
It's almost like they were thinking about nation building on on multiple levels at the same time, like
Yeah.
the physical division of the land,
Mhm.
establishing a legal framework,
Right.
even just the placement of these cities themselves.
Absolutely. It's all
But
connected.
of course, you can't have a functioning society without people who are dedicated to maintaining those laws.
Right.
And in this case, upholding their covenant with God.
Exactly.
And that's where I guess the Levites come in, as we see in Joshua chapter 21.
Ah, yes, the Levites. They really held this unique position in this emerging nation. You could almost call them the keepers of knowledge, the spiritual backbone of Israelite society.
Interesting.
Their role was just fundamentally different. It wasn't focused on farming or warfare like the other tribes.
I see.
They were the priests, the teachers, the ones who were entrusted with preserving their faith, their laws, their history.
And so they didn't get like a single territory for themselves?
No, they didn't. They were given cities scattered all over the place
Oh, wow.
throughout the other tribes' lands.
Huh. There's some interesting symbolism there.
Oh, absolutely. There's a beautiful kind of symbolism in that. By placing the Levites throughout the land, it's like they were ensuring that every tribe had that direct access, to the religious guidance and education. Yeah. It was a way to unify the nation through that shared faith, right?
Wow.
And it also created this decentralized religious authority.
It's like they wove the Levites into the very fabric of the nation,
Exactly.
like connecting everyone to their covenant with God, no matter where they actually live.
It was a very deliberate choice, for sure.
Wow. But it wasn't just about like spiritual sustenance, though, was it? I mean,
Yeah.
Joshua 21 specifically mentions that the Levites were given pasture land as well.
That's right. That's right. They weren't just handed cities and expected to survive on spiritual fulfillment alone.
Right, because even though their primary role wasn't, farming in the traditional sense, they had practical needs.
Right, exactly. I mean, they needed land to graze their livestock,
Right.
which, let's be real, provided sustenance and were often used in religious ceremonies,
Yeah.
So it highlights this really interesting aspect that even within this divinely ordained system,
Yeah.
there was this real understanding of, their everyday requirements.
It's a good reminder that even in ancient times, life was about more than just, blindly following the rules. It was about figuring out how to actually make those rules work in the real world.
Absolutely, and how to build a society that reflected both the divine and the practical. The spiritual and just the everyday realities of life, this whole thing, the seemingly simple act of dividing up the land.
Okay.
It was about so much more than just, drawing lines on a map.
Yeah.
It was about forging a nation. It was about establishing their identity, their laws, their connection to their faith, all of it.
It's amazing how these little details really bring that all to life.
It really is. It's about understanding that, for the Israelites, land, it wasn't just a commodity.
Right.
It was this deeply personal thing, It was intertwined with their very identity, their history, their covenant with God. This whole division, this whole thing was rooted in the ancient promise to Abraham.
Wow.
It was a tangible connection to their ancestors, to their faith, all of it.
It's hard for us, in our modern world where we see land as something you buy and sell, to fully wrap our heads around that kind of connection.
It really is. But for the Israelites, land, it was about inheritance.
Yeah.
It was about legacy. It was about their place within a divinely ordained order.
Right.
It was about belonging to a people and a place.
Wow.
A connection that resonated deeply with them then and honestly still holds a lot of significance in many cultures even today.
It really makes you think, like, how would you even feel if your inheritance, your future was divinely determined and geographically defined, like if your very identity was so closely tied to a specific piece of land? Well, that's a wrap on another deep dive. This time we went deep into the world of ancient land deals, divine decrees, and even the birth of a nation,
It was quite a journey.
It was, from meticulous surveys to cities of refuge to the unique role of the Levites. We really uncovered some hidden gems in Joshua chapters 19 through 21.
We did.
And it's incredible to me how these ancient stories, they still feel so relevant even today. you know?
They really do.
It's a good reminder that even what seems like, a dry historical account can offer these really surprising insights.
Absolutely.
So the next time you're reading anything that seems purely factual,
Yeah.
just remember, there's always more beneath the surface. You might be surprised at what you discover.
Always more to uncover, that's for sure.
And speaking of discovering, next time on the deep dive, we're leaving behind the ancient world, and we are venturing into, well, you'll have to join us to find out. Until then, happy exploring.
Welcome to Charlie and Mia's podcast. We're embarking on an exciting journey to read through the entire Bible in just 1 year. Every day, we dive into Scripture, exploring its meanings and how it applies to our lives today. We invite you to join us on this incredible adventure of learning and discovery. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode.